So how can we break free from this system, this matrix of control, and begin to live lives of sheer happiness, satchitananda, existence, consciousness, bliss? How can we actually live more harmoniously, not only with ourselves, but with nature, and of course, live more freely? Because if that isn't the goal, then what is? What is the despotic agendas of these psychopathic leaders who are actually misleaders? Because it seems to be this sort of AI open air prison, right? But what do we want to do instead? Well, what we need to realize is what Buckminster Fuller, who was an American architect, said. He said that you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that's what we need to do. You need to make this model that we're currently living in, which most people are disgusted by and fed up with, and we need to create a new model that makes that one obsolete. So how do you do that? You do it by making one that's better. It doesn't need to destroy that system. It doesn't need to completely crumble it. It just needs to piggyback it, utilize and extract what's good from it, and then we can harness those benefits and yield them into a different world, which can actually begin on a very local scale. Not like these big projects that you see, like, for example, Jacques Fresco and the Venus Project, which is just this huge, grandiose image of these huge sort of cities, which is all fantastic, but it's just very difficult to actually get these things off the ground. And even what I'm doing, even though it's happening to begin with on a very local scale, one specific site in the world, and the location of this is what I'm suggesting on the website, newearth.land, is Portugal, because it makes sense in a number of ways, but you can check this out on the website. But what we can do to start with is ultimately immunize ourselves against the greed of capitalism, whilst also immunizing ourselves against the psychopathy of communism and indeed to some extent socialism, where it's all top-down, government-owned, you will own nothing and you will be happy, like Klaus Schwab type stuff, where they're actually introducing a lot of these new, rather sort of nefarious agendas. It has to be a mid-ground, and that is autonomism. It's true freedom for everyone. And how does that actually start, though? It starts by us coming together and realizing that millions of people with £1 is a totally different mindset that could drive the construction industry as to what we currently have, which is just these rich, affluent millionaires who are building our homes for profit. And this is why there's this cost of living crisis. It's completely insane. It doesn't need to continue like this. Once we realize that we are the people, we are the power, we are the 99%, there's no stopping us. We are in the driving seat here. Like, we've got internet, we've got social media, we've got ways to connect people from all over the world. I don't know, maybe somebody in Haiti is watching this. Maybe someone over in India is watching this. Maybe someone over in Russia. The fact is, we've got the numbers now if we can just simply connect people to offer a more transparent, democratic, and truly optional system of taxation, which is essentially civilizational scale crowdsourcing. And that is how we actually introduce that into the construction industry, and we start to build homes that are freely provided for people, shelter, energy, food and water, co-housing projects that have community spaces, that have productive spaces, that have living quarters, that have industrial spaces where we talk about 3D printing and some of these new, more advanced technologies. But the shelter, energy, food and water aspect of it is what we need to understand, that there is absolutely no reason for us to charge ourselves for these things to exist. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm sure when people think about it, it doesn't make any sense to them either. So why do we keep doing it? Well, it's because we're programmed to keep following the system. Whether this new petition comes along or a new election comes along, we wait 4 years to hope, shake our fist at the TV, and then nothing changes. Like we've seen this all the way through my life and long before. So I don't understand why people are so hoodwinked by it, but it's because I think of our general sort of daily existence in this life, where we're sort of incarcerated by this wake, work, eat, sleep cycle. And we don't have the time to expansively contemplate our place in the universe. And therefore our minds are shrunk into this position of, this is just the way it is. Like my mum is constantly saying, if I had £1 for every time my mum has said that, I'll be able to just crack on with this myself and then show people by example that this is how we can go forwards in society. Okay, you don't need to pay 900, 1,100 pounds, dollars, whatever currency you're using, to survive. So how does it start? It starts by us crowdsourcing this land, and then from that point operating into phase 2. Again, you can check this all out at newearth.land, which is the construction or the design And then construction is phase 3 of these co-housing projects. The flagship, like I say, will most likely operate in Portugal because it logistically makes sense and also affordability-wise. But there are also huge incentives in Portugal for co-housing to operate. And I've lived in some co-housing projects myself, but people often think, oh, there's something similar here, something similar there. There is nothing like this because those co-housing projects are still unbelievably extortionate. And they're driven from this capitalistic model of profit still. Whereas what I'm saying is, why don't we just come together and crowdsource on a monumental scale our new society, New Earth? Why don't we bring into life our ideals and visions about how we actually want to exist? Because first and foremost, what underpins everything is security. If you think of the Maslow hierarchy of needs, but unfortunately, we're trained into this individualistic, atomized model that focuses too much on what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you do? I want to be a singer. I want to be an architect. I want to be a dancer. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a footballer. But actually, underneath all of that, more importantly, is how are we actually supporting that? How are we actually building society, and how are we creating our homes? The very thing that we need to actually physiologically exist. Those things, like I'm saying time and time again, should be human rights and should be a guaranteed foundation. The term human rights sounds quite wishy-washy, so how about we say these should be a guaranteed foundation for newborn babies, for people to come into this world. Why not let's create a stronger foundation for everyone? I'm sounding a little bit like, Build Back Better after the whole 2020-2021 ordeal, which is just still a phenomenal thing. But, I don't talk about it anymore because of censorship. And I lost my platform previously on Instagram, and there's not really much point in going through the whole process again. But what I'd like people to understand is that we can break free from this system simply if we're willing to do what we do. Like when, for example, you want something, like you say you want a Netflix subscription, because you know you're getting something back, you're willing to pay the whatever it is, like £15 per month. So what we need to do, though, is we need to think more expansively, more wisely now about our future and future generations, not only our lives right now, but also just the general future of humanity, to see that, hey, instead of like even £15, which is the cost of a Netflix subscription or whatever, you can just pay £1. And if everyone does this, this will generate a totally different revenue that's come from a humanitarian perspective. And so what do you get back? You get this new society, you get the transformation, you get a life that's worth living. You get to wake up and think, well, what do I want to do with my day? Truly. Well, you can pursue your hobbies, you get more space, you get more time, you get more money, you get more freedom, you get more everything, that the benefits are endless. And so we need to realize that we're the only ones that can do this. We're the only ones that can create this type of society. And so what I'm saying is let's just crack on with it. So let's try and get this video moving, try and get this channel moving. So do subscribe, to like the video, do leave some comments, do ask some questions. Adam at newearth.land if you'd like to learn more, but you can of course do so at newearth.land. And so with that, thanks very much, and we'll see you in the next video.